Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Creeping Clouds channel. Today's video is going to be a little different. Yes, there's still gameplay. I didn't want everybody to get bored while I ramble on and on. But today, I'm going to be reviewing GodSlap. Not sure if many people have heard of it. I hope many people have. GodSlap is a comic series created by Mr. Charlie White and a few of his friends. Charlie White, aka Moist Critical, aka Penguin Zero. He's a legend. You'll know him. Long hair, white shirt, all the time, unless he's being held hostage, then he's in a different colored shirt. That's for another day though. So today I wanted to go over issues 1 through 4 of GodSlap. I purchased issue 1 when it first got published. I think I read about halfway through it. And didn't really want to get too invested myself because I know that when I really get into a piece of media, I just want more and more and more of it. So I decided to wait until some more issues were released. Time passed, kind of forgot about it, not gonna lie. And what do you know? I get advertisements for Bad Egg Publishing, GodSlap's issue 2 through 4. Perfect! Ordered them up, read them last night. Absolutely gold. I love them. Just gonna say it straight out. Love it so far. Now, who am I? I'm Creeping Clouds, and that's all you need to know. I was on a long hiatus in the jungle, preparing for everything that could possibly happen. Who knows? But that's all you gotta know. 21 years of age, and I'm still giving more information. Gotta zip up my mouth. Creeping Clouds, that's who he is. I wanted to put out a spoiler warning. I'm not really going to be holding back. I'm going to be going through each issue, describing what happens, and just going from there. So you've been warned about spoilers. They are definitely in this video. Wanted to begin by talking about Meteor and Bad Egg Publishing. The first issue was published by Meteor, like meat ear, you know, you're a meaty guy, but I'm Meteor, you know what I'm saying? Meteor Publishing was made by the creators of GodSlap, Charlie White and his friends that created it. Actually, I'll give them credit now since I have them right in front of me. Created by Charlie White, Jackson Clark, Matt Phillips, and Danny Palmer. Legends, if you ask me. Great comic series. Now, issue 1 was published by Meteor Publishing, as I said before. Created by the creators of GodSlap to get it published and out to the world. And issues 2 through 4 are published by Bad Egg Publishing. Now, I did a little bit of research myself. Bad Egg has been working to make publishing easier for online creators, like YouTubers, Twitch streamers, people along those lines. And they've really streamlined the process of just making it easier. They handle all the printing and publishing, stuff like that, and it seems to be working. Physically, Bad Egg's publishing is a lot better in my opinion. In issue 1, it's printed on just paper, which is fine, but you know, it leads to tears and other stuff. The paper obviously is more prone to being torn up or bent or ruined. 2 through 4 are a laminated paper. You know, I don't even know how to... It's still paper, but it's, you know, kind of laminated. I don't know how to describe it. It's like every other comic you get, right? Or most comics. It's not just paper. It's got some protection on it, makes the pages a little more durable, and honestly, the print looks better too. And I'm not blaming Meteor at all. I think issue 1 came out superb. I just think 2 through 4 are produced in a much higher quality, which I enjoy. One other thing too is, since Bad Egg took over, they started making an art gallery at the end of each issue for the different covers. Now, issue 1 had a few different cover styles, and they're not listed anywhere throughout the issue. It doesn't say what, you know, edition you have or whatnot. Honestly, I don't even remember. It doesn't really matter to me. I just think it's a cool detail that they added. With all that rambling out of the way, I think it's time to get into issue number 1. Now we're introduced to our main characters in issue 1, as you would hope. You have Ias Braun, I hope I said that correctly, Darius Braun, Cyan Renault, and Cyril Renault. I will read the descriptions for you now. Ias Braun, strong-willed, naturally skilled, and tenacious. Ias is a sheltered soul whose heart yearns for a sense of purpose. While there is no doubt Ias possesses raw talent, he desperately needs training to unlock his true potential. Then we have Darius Braun, a hulking, muscular titan of a man, made of pure mass. Darius is a brooding figure who harbors a very dark and complicated history. Everything he does now is done to protect Ias, whose life he has intertwined his own too. Cyan Renault, determined and wildly smart. Cyan is the only daughter of Multiplier's infamous and altruistic doctor. The life goal of healing the world's wounds, one injured soul at a time, like her mother and father before her, Cyan has her work cut out for her. Last but not least, Cyril Renault, a sight for sore eyes and wounded bodies. Cyril is a well-known and well-respected doctor in Multiplier. I'm gonna try and say Multiplier because it even sounds like I'm adding an E in between the T and P. I don't want to call the city Markiplier, but it sure sounds like I'm saying it. Okay. He's a well-respected doctor in Montpelier. Montpelier. Yeah, Montpelier. What the? I'm having a goddamn stroke. He's a well-respected doctor in Montpelier. A kind-hearted man. He helps those affected by the city's inescapable gang violence, whilst earnestly attempting to complete his life's work. Those are the 4 main characters introduced in issue 1. There is a section called The Red Enigma, which kind of dives into why Cyril is doing what he's doing. They talk about how he lost his wife about a decade earlier due to some blood infection, virus, a sickness in the blood. So he's dedicated his entire work into figuring out what this illness is, how to prevent it, and just make the city of Montpelier safer in general. Then they also talk about the city of Montpelier. It's a slum-ridden city nestled against the southern side of the capital city known as Executor. Montpelier is composed of multiple districts. They all share the same community, that being each are packed full of seedy establishments and scrap zones that attract a large collection of disenfranchised souls of the planet, Aether. So their planet is called Aether. The main city it takes place in is Montpelier, and it's on the southern side of the capital city known as Executor. So it's almost a city off a city. I wouldn't really say suburbs because the way it's drawn is definitely like like they describe it, a slumlord-ridden city, full of crime and just not good people in general. As you can probably tell, GodSlap takes place in a cyberpunk-esque dystopia. High crime rates. People are really just living to survive unless you're the upper echelon of society. Then you have everything at your disposal, all riches, anything like that. Now, Montpelier is the last city between Executor and the great stretch of deserts and wastelands known as the Maisma. And the Maisma does come up in issue 3, which we'll talk about more. First 12 to 15 pages is absolutely insane. It shows Darius walking into a club and just wrecking shit. Just absolutely destroying people and destroying the club. I won't go too deep into that first section, mainly because they had it animated, and I'll put a little section of it up now. If you want to check it out, I'll leave the link to it in the description. It is really cool, and they did a great job animating it and, putting it in color and in an actual video. And within these first few pages, it becomes really clear what type of world this is. It's your typical dystopian society with, cyberpunk based. You have women walking around the club, barely wearing anything, just tape over their nipples. You can see people with some cybernetic implants, maybe some metal arms or a faceplate even. It's hard to tell, but you can definitely see some cybernetic lines. This environment at this club is, just a seedy place in general. You got a bunch of hounds, bunch of men dogs just taking advantage of, the waitresses because they're not wearing anything, smacking their asses, just being dicks in general, complaining about how their drinks aren't there. Once Darius deals with the top dog of the club, I assume the owner, the club owner says, I let you walk away. Please don't do this, Darius. If you kill me, they'll know. So there's definitely a relationship going on here with Darius and his past and this club owner whose name is Sal. They seem to be talking about Ias, you'll never be safe again if you kill me, you or the boy. And Darius doesn't really like that. He smacks the ever-living dog shit out of Sal. It's GodSlap. He slaps the ever-living shit out of him. And after that, the story transitions to what looks like the Mice Mont. It's outside of Montpelier, and it looks like a desert region, maybe on the outskirts of it. They're not entirely in the desert. Darius and Ias meet. Ias is working on building a fence. Darius says, finish up the fence, get cleaned up, and put my Lancer, aka hover bike, in the garage when you're done. Ias, being a young, strapping lad, sees this as an opportunity to run away, get some excitement in the city, see what he's been missing out on. Drives off towards Montpelier. Darius is one single line. Damn it. I mean, you should have seen this coming, my man. You should have seen this coming. The story then transitions to Cyril. Following him for a few pages, it shows his lab. And I really wanted to highlight these few scenes here because the way that this comic is drawn is really cool. It's all black and white, except for what I've noticed is any blood and any powers that people use. The powers are usually highlighted in a bright yellowish orange color, almost like electricity. And the blood is obviously very much highlighted against the black and white, and it looks incredible. I'll put a picture up for you. So Dr. Cyril Renault comes into his lab with an alarm, and they've clearly made some sort of breakthrough on the red enigma that he's spent his whole life working towards. He has a robotic assistant named PEX, P-E-C-S. And PEX stands for Prospective Emergency Cyborg System. So he must be a cyborg of some sort. He looks fully robotic though. He can even transform himself into a ball and roll away. Transformers, am I right? So Dr. Renault gets some sort of what seems like a breakthrough on his work with the red enigma. He tells PEX that he knows what needs to be done, and then that's the end of the conversation. PEX goes off as Dr. Renault is thinking to himself, this will change our world forever, for better or for worse. So he definitely had some sort of breakthrough happen. The story then goes back to Ias as he is now in Montpelier, riding the Lancer that he rode in on, as he's attacked by one of the local gangs known as the Scrappers. He tries to fight them off his Lancer, but there's one persistent one that just keeps grabbing onto him and ends up breaking the Lancer, causing them to crash. Now Ias is surrounded by a bunch of these Scrappers, ready to take all the parts from his Lancer to sell off, make a few bucks, Ias obviously doesn't want that. He's not even supposed to be in the city, let alone get the Lancer stripped for parts. All that bad news. Things escalate quickly between Ias and the Scrappers, where it turns into a full-blown fistfight. It's very obvious that Ias has had maybe some training. He's very nimble on his feet. He's able to dodge the big hulking punches coming his way. He slaps the ever-living dog shit out of all of them. There's one dude that looks like he could be 8 feet tall, and he slaps him in the stomach and rips him in half. And it all ends with this giant explosion. As Ias wakes up, he sees a severed arm in front of him and quickly realizes that it's his own. He slapped so hard that he blew his own arm off. And he's lost a lot of blood at this point, as you can imagine. He tries to get up, tries to get to safety, walk away. There's no immediate threat. He took care of the Scrappers, but in turn blew his arm off. As he's walking, he kind of collapses against a wall, and someone comes up on a motorcycle, it looks like, or maybe another Lancer, probably. He's talking to himself, I can't. Oh, I need to get up. Darius is gonna kill me. And that's when we're introduced to Cyan Renault, the daughter of Dr. Cyril Renault. She finds Ias bleeding profusely and helps him get up and get back to her father's hospital or lab. Now at this point, there's a mysterious figure watching Ias and watching Cyan as they make their exit with the blood-covered walls around them. This character looks like he's wearing an Iron Man suit, but kind of in a realistic The Boys way, if that makes any sense. He's running along rooftops as he's talking to himself, saying, interesting, Defister is not gonna like this. He jumps down from the roofs, gets in his aircraft of some sort. This character's name is Olfactor. Now, Olfactor returns to what is known as the bicep. The bicep is this floating, no, not floating, it's hovering. It's a hovering structure that is kind of like the capital of Montpelier. Defister, who we'll get more into, especially in the next issue, is kind of, I don't know if maybe he is the official head of Montpelier, but he's definitely pulling some strings behind the scenes. If not, he is, governing Montpelier. Olfactor gets in contact with the bicep, where he is reminded that he was not allowed to leave Montpelier. So Olfactor clearly has a specific duty that he must be doing. As he approaches the bicep, he says, there's been an update regarding the doctor situation. It seems like Olfactor has been watching Dr. Renault, Cyril Renault, on behalf of this Defister character. And on the last page, we get to see what Defister looks like. He is I don't even know how to describe it. Darius's description said he was a hulk of a man. Defister is whatever is 5 levels above that. He is enormous with this bulking mustache too. Absolutely sexy. And that's where we leave off issue 1. It's a very intriguing intro into the series. You get to see, some of the world, what is even possible in this world. I mean, a young boy, he's not a boy, he's probably a young man, slaps this giant man so hard that it rips his own arm off. I mean, even with the intro with Darius, you can clearly see that there is something different within this world, Aether, than our reality. And it's very cool. I do have to say, issue 1, yeah, very fire. Now, moving on to issue 2. The cover that I purchased was cover B. Issue 2 starts off with Cyan bringing Ias to her father, Cyril. where they quickly try to help him reattach his arm, get him back up and ready to move around again. Now Pex and the doctor are talking between each other. These readings can't be right. The likelihood of this boy's survival, I know, Pex. The way the arm just reattached itself, it's... So clearly, Ias is special of sorts. It doesn't say how much time passed between Cyan bringing Ias in and when he wakes up, but he is able to move his arm as soon as he wakes up. So it has almost completely healed itself on its own. It just needed to be reattached. Then introductions happen. Cyril and Cyan introduce themselves as a father and daughter duo in the medical field of Montpelier. Ias makes it very clear that he cannot stay there, that he needs to go back. Darius, is waiting for him to come back. Who knows what's going on with Darius? Dr. Renault makes it very clear that he cannot discharge him just yet. He needs some more rest and to heal up. Pex takes a blood sample from Ias on Dr. Renault's orders, and they head back into his lab. Before leaving, Cyril Renault tells his daughter Cyan, please keep an eye on him. Make sure he gets some rest. And the very next page, Cyan is running down the hallway with Ias in a wheelchair. They're having fun. They're having a great bonding experience. Cyan talks a little bit about her dad, how he hasn't been happy in a long time, and that she wants to show him something. She opens up this room with a huge medical database. In Cyan's words, it's storage mostly for old medical files, x-rays, and body imaging. Some date back almost 100 years. Cyan said that she used to spend hours here, pretending to do medical research just like her dad. As they're reminiscing and talking, Ias says you're really lucky to share so much with your dad. And Cyan's response is, what's the deal with your parents? Here's where we learn that Ias never met his parents. He doesn't know them. Darius has been all that he knows. Darius has been raising him since he was a little child. And as they start to realize that maybe Ias's pain meds are starting to wear off, there is a huge boom, throwing Cyan and Ias off their balance. And then we see that there are 4 gooners that blew up one of the lab walls where Dr. Renault was doing his work. They jokingly say, sorry to drop in, Doc, we don't have an appointment, but I'm here for a medical consultation. Dr. Renault is obviously very upset and screams at them to stop it, leave it alone. They're going after his mega blood cell, it looks like, his ultimate research. And they hit him in the head. Doesn't look like it kills him, it just kind of puts him on his ass for a second. As Cyan and Ias run into the lab, Cyan is captured by one of the gooners, held in kind of a chokehold with her mouth covered so she can't scream. Ias is very, very mad about this. He's an ill-tempered man. He doesn't know how to control his emotions yet. As the doctor is asking what these gooners even want and why they're there, the head honcho of them says, the boss knew you'd come through, Doc. And then communicates with somebody saying, sir, you were right. Then it transitions up to the bicep, where we see DeFister preparing a diving board off of this hovering, gigantic fucking ship. And from counting down from 5 to 1, jumps off of the bicep, flying down into the city of Montpelier, and when he finally reaches 1, he breaks through the lab wall, or really the lab ceiling. He ends up landing on one of his own guys, actually, and calls it just collateral damage. This dude is giga beyond fucking belief. Now, once all the blood settles and everybody has a moment to breathe after this fucking giant guy broke through the ceiling, there's obviously an argument between Dr. Renault and DeFister. Dr. Renault obviously doesn't want him to ruin or touch his life's work that he's dedicated himself to, but Defister couldn't give two shits. He doesn't care. He wants his research, and he wants what he has created, this massive red blood cell. Dr. Renault gets smacked by Defister pretty hard. It knocks him unconscious, and Cyan runs over to him, breaking the grasp of the gooner that held her. Ias at this point is extremely pissed off. He smacks Defister in the face and creates a giant dust cloud. He thinks he's dealt with Defister, all cocky, saying, "Which one of you is?" And then he's cut off by the sight of Defister still standing there, strong, with nothing but a little nick on his cheek. It's like the Thanos scene. All that for a drop of blood. That's how it kind of seems. Literally just a little nick on his cheek. Defister grabs Ias by the throat with one hand and proceeds to fucking strangle him. And all of a sudden, Defister has this strange flashback to holding a baby. It throws him off guard a little bit. It's weird. He doesn't even really know what's going on. What is this connection? Who is this boy? And Ias Ias breaks free and continues to smack the ever-living shit out of Defister. Again, to no avail. It does nothing to him. Defister catches his hands and headbutts him in the head, sending him to the ground. Cyan is very distraught at this point. Her father was just knocked out. Ias had just been knocked out. She is in tears. Her whole world is coming to what seems like an end. And Defister's not done with Ias either. He is punching him in the gut, slamming him on the ground, just beating the ever-living shit out of him, and says that Ias is a disappointment to have such power, but not the slightest idea of how to harness it. So, again, we're seeing more signs of Ias being this incredibly powerful being, but not being able to harness it. Same with his emotions. He lets his emotions run wild and gets the better of him. Ias gets launched through the lab wall, completely pummeled by Defister. And as Defister is cleaning off his suit from all the rubble, all the blood, one of his henchmen gooners says, "Boss, the research!" And Dr. Renault is destroying his research by his own hands. He has the mindset that if he can't keep control of his research and to continue the good that he's working on, he will not let it fall into the hands of evil, into the hands of this Defister man. He loves fisting, if you couldn't tell. Cyan is very upset. She knows what fate her father had just sealed for himself. And there is a massive explosion in the lab, blowing everyone around it to pieces, except for Defister, of course, because he's fucking Defister. Cyan gets launched and covered in rubble and knocked unconscious, where she's in this dreamlike state talking with her father. Her father's talking about his regrets, how she must hate him for not really being the perfect father in her life. He got so consumed by the red enigma that killed his wife that he kind of pushed his daughter away. Obviously, they still were living together. They didn't have a terrible relationship, but Cyan felt like she never really knew her father because he was constantly working on his life's work. He leaves off this conversation by saying, "I know you miss your mother, but I've seen her every day in you. You hold her values. You look just like her. And now it's your turn to not give up on this broken world and to do everything you possibly can to help people that need the help." Conversation being cut short, Cyan had a lot more to say to her father, but she awakens under the rubble, asking if anybody's around, just being barely able to stand herself. She finds Ias's arm sticking out from the rubble and rescues him, clears off all the bits and pieces, gets some breath. He is alive, but he is beat to shit. He just went toe-to-toe with Defister the strongest character in this comic series so far, and just got beat up the night before. So Ias has not had a chance to rest up or really live since he's entered the city. On the very last page, we see a strange cowboy-looking man roll up. Who is this? We will find out. In issue 3, let's do it! 3 is probably my favorite. I'm just gonna say it straight up. Probably my favorite because of the cowboy daddy. Cowboy daddy named Noon. Like the time of day. Like high noon, partner. He is the cyberpunk cowboy daddy. Straight out. Now, issue 3 begins with a similar setting as issue 2 ended with Cyan's dreamlike state. Ias is now in a dreamlike state where he is seemingly in a very shallow body of waters, hitting the water in frustration, angry. Why couldn't I save them? I know I could have. This isn't fair. I'm so useless. I'm a failure. And he hears a voice. Pathetic. Guess who it is? I'll give you 2 seconds. Darius T. Rucker. No, not Darius Rucker, but Darius. Darius shows up in Ias's dream as a very towering presence. He's portrayed, at least in this dream, as something above Ias, something larger and more powerful. Which I think is, this whole little dream section is about. It's Ias arguing with this vision of Darius, how it's all Darius's fault that he can't be stronger because he kept him locked up on that desert ranch for so long. If he could have at least trained him more often, and he could have fought better, he could have saved Dr. Renault. And Darius just laughs it off. You're a burden I carry out of pity. It's clear that this is how Ias thinks Darius looks at him. That he's just this boy who he has to take care of. And is dead weight, pretty much. Ias gets fucking pissed and has a power-up in this dream. It looks sick as shit. He's got lightning coming out of his eyes. I'll put a picture up now. And he tries to punch Darius, and obviously goes right through him because it's just a dream. And once more, Darius calls him pathetic. And Ias has this realization where he has to get stronger. There's no other option for him than to get stronger and to show Darius what, quote, real power is. And that at the end of the day, he needs to wake up. He needs to wake up from this dream that he's having if he wants to get stronger. And what seemed like a shallow body of water, he slowly sinks into, where he sees this woman. I presume that it's his mother. Never seen this woman in the previous issues before. And she tells Ias himself that you have to... Gets cut off to a loud scream of Ias's name. Now we're going to cut back to Defister and Olfactor for a little bit. Just a conclusion on the explosion and what the hell happened. The only clear damage to Defister is that his suit jacket is gone. That is how tanky this man is. He ate an explosion point blank that killed everyone else around him, blew up the building it was in, and the only damage it did to him was destroy his coat, his suit jacket. He finds Dr. Renault's pocket watch, which holds a picture of Cyril, Cyan, and Cyan's mother, who they had lost to the blood disease. Defister finds this interesting. For one reason or another, it's not very clear. What is clear was that Olfactor was sent to track down where Cyan and Ias went, because they were nowhere to be found in the rubble. Olfactor comes back with nothing, and this pisses Defister off. He did learn one key piece of information, that the two of them escaped with Noon. That's right, Daddy Cowboy Noon. Sorry, that was my boner hitting the desk. As Ias comes back to reality, oh, there goes gravity. He's talking with Cyan. You know, I'm sorry about your dad. I couldn't save him. He clearly feels guilty for not being able to save Cyril. Cyan's only regret is that she wished she got to know her father better. I mean, can you really blame her? Now here is where Noon is introduced. He talks like a Western cowboy. Oh, one more thing before Noon introduces himself is that Ias says that he promises that he'll avenge Cyan's father. He's not gonna let this go, clearly. Ias isn't very trustful of Noon, this random dude who just happened to save him and Cyan out of the goodness of his heart. It seems like that's a very rare occurrence in this universe. People just being genuinely good people, you know? They have some dinner, they talk by the campfire a little bit. And Ias is very quiet throughout all of this, listening to Noon, presuming that he's lying about trying to keep them safe, because he's heard that before from Darius. But all Darius did was lock him up on their property, their house, their barn, whatever they were living in. Noon suspects Ias's suspicion. Says, I'm sure you've heard that before, that you're a deadweight partner, but I see something in you, and if you stick with me, I'll show you how to harness it, how to use it. And he flips a knife up into the air and perfectly lands it on the tip of his middle finger. The blade tip lands on the tip of his middle finger. Slightly bleeding, it's a very sharp blade clearly, but he keeps it there, balanced, showing how he has control and that he can teach Ias this strange power that he has and how to use it to its full potential, which is what Ias has been wanting this whole time. Ias wants to go back to Montpelier. He wants to get revenge for Dr. Renault. But he is in no condition to fight Defister again after just being beat to all hell. So, Noon says we'll rest up for the night and head to the Mice Mine, the desert. The next morning, they are set out on their journey, the three of them, walking along, talking. Ias is kind of complaining, you know, how much further do we have to go? You know, at least I'd see some action back in Montpelier. And they come to a crossroad where they need to cross this gorge in the desert. They need to get over this canyon. Their plan is to go down this canyon and up and across it, basically. Noon has his own Lancer, which he constantly refers to as his horse. He is a true cowboy, and by the campfire, he talks about where that came from. I just asked him why he talks the way he does, and he said, you know, as a boy, I read a lot of stories about the cowboys from the Mice Mine. I think it just stuck with me, and it became part of his identity. So he is virtually a cyberpunk cowboy. He looks really damn hot, too, if I do say so myself. Now, Noon tells Ias and Cyan that they are going to ride his Lancer while Noon runs alongside them, so that way they can get across as quick as possible without running into any danger. Ias kind of takes offense to this, you know. I'm stronger than I look. I can outrun you. Try to keep up, old man. So Cyan takes his Lancer just by herself, while Noon and Ias begin to run. They're laughing and joking. Noon says, come on now, Ias, keep those knees up. And Ias ends up tripping over a rock. And Ias, you know, just calmly says, oh, don't worry. What's that rumbling? Noon yells out, Ias, put the pain aside. Focus on moving. It's just a grin. This thing is fucking terrifying. Put a picture up now, you can see what I'm talking about. And it quickly captures Ias. It has this strange, you know, it's got a claw like a crab, and it shoots it out and uses that filament connecting it to wrap up Ias and get him constrained. And Noon pulls out the knives. He turns them red hot and launches them at the Duskren. Because of that, the Duskin releases its hold on Ias, and Ias goes to town on it, slapping the dog shit out of it. And the Duskrin retreats back into the ground. Noon solidifies that, this isn't over. We need to keep moving. You gotta focus on controlling the anger inside of you if you want to get better, and if you want to protect what's important to you. As this conversation is happening, the Duskrin attacks Cyan. She gets launched off the Lancer, and is able to dodge out of the way of the claw that once constrained Ias. Noon even makes a remark that she has some fancy footwork. Cyan ends up getting restrained. Ias is about to rush in, guns blazing, but Noon stops him for a brief moment. Says, "Focus your anger, Ias. It's the point of the knife." Meaning, take your emotions and sharpen them into this edge. Use it as your blade to attack. And Ias gets a very similar power-up to what he had in his dream. The lightning coming out of his eyes, everything like that. Smacks the shit out of this Duskrin and kills it in a single blow. And as Noon says, "It wasn't bad, right good even. Though I reckon the teacher deserves some of the credit." He clearly cares about these two, and he clearly wants them to be safe and Ias to get his true potential out that Darius never taught him for, whatever reason. We don't know yet. Now, as they're trying to figure out what to do next, Noon picks up his knives. Ias wants to get a trophy for killing this Duskrin and rips off a horn from it. Noon instantly smells something fishy, smells something bad, and tells them to get away from the Duskrin corpse. Something is coming. And of course, a Moth-nado shows up. Not a Sharknado, a Moth-nado. A giant, disgusting moth flies out of the corpse of this Duskrin. This is a totally next level opponent for Ias, at the very least. To where Noon says, "I need to take care of this myself. I cannot teach you now. This needs to end quickly." And he supercharges up one of his knives and completely blasts this Moth-nado out of existence. Burn. Ias is ecstatic. Says, "That was amazing. You'll have to teach me." "No time. Wasn't fast enough. Blasted Moth-nado kicked up a mess of twisters." And now this valley is full of these twisters, these tornadoes. The Moth-nado created tornadoes. Could you imagine? Noon quickly yells that they need to get to cover, get away from the twisters. As Cyan is running, she gets hit in the stomach by a flying rock. Knocks her on the ground. Ias is trying to find her to help her, but gets lifted up off the ground by one of the twisters. Noon quickly realizes this and is able to lasso Ias's torso with his whip. He's able to hold on to him for a few seconds before his whip snaps in half, and Ias is sent into the whipping winds of this tornado. Absolutely great issue. It is a bit of a training arc, but I think that Noon is such a great character. He is just insanely badass, insanely cool. He is just next level, big dick style cool. And now for the final issue published. Issue number 4. Issue 4 starts off pretty interesting. It shows Ias covered in sand underneath a rock, unconscious after being whipped away by the tornado's twisters. And Ias is found by a very mysterious being, a cloaked man with a walking stick, and stitches all over his hands and his arms. His hand looks multicolored, like maybe it's the skin from other people. And as he goes to grab Ias's arm out of the sand, one of his fingers falls off. The stitching breaks. Doesn't seem to notice either, just walks off like nothing happened. And it's interesting too, keep this in mind, that this mysterious character has a bit of a tick when he talks. I'll read out some lines for you. Lost? F. Forgotten? Abandoned? Dead? Yes, F, yes. No one's ever really dead. He's got this weird hef kind of tick when he talks. Just keep that in mind for later. The story then goes back to Noon and Cyan after the Twisters have settled down. They make it their mission to find where Ias went. The story then cuts to Defister in the Bicep, where he is met by Olfactor, saying that there are no signs of them in Montpelier, but we will know as soon as they enter the city. And this clearly pisses Defister off. He wants answers. He doesn't want, loose statements. We'll know this, we'll want this. He is a menacing figure of power, and he wants answers of where these 2 and 3, now that he knows Noon is with them, where these 3 are. This scene kind of shows the type of man that Defister is. He's being massaged by 4 different women. They cower in fear when he stands up to confront Olfactor, and Defister towers over Olfactor, by the way. Olfactor himself is a menacingly looking character. I just cannot stop describing Defister. He is out of this world, how massive he is, and wide this man is. During this conversation, it becomes very clear that Olfactor is kind of an investment for Defister. He invested money into this sensory control suit that Olfactor wears, and that it's time for him to make good on his investment, and that he needs to find the boy without delay. He finishes the conversation by saying, "If you still treasure my patronage, do not fail me again." It's interesting the relationship that Defister and Olfactor have with each other. Defister expects above and beyond from Olfactor, some things that are completely out of his control or unrealistic to even achieve. And there's no reasoning with him. When Olfactor tries to speak up and says, there's only so much I can do when they're not in the city that you have me stationed in, Defister doesn't like it at all. He does not like being talked back to. He wants a yes man. Okay, sir, I will do that, sir. And Olfactor is clearly, a presence of himself. He clearly walks around with weight on his shoulders, and he doesn't get the respect I think that he wants from Defister. Ias wakes up in a cave. We're back with Ias now. And he is startled by this strange figure that says, "Good, you're awake." He says, "I'm half starving." Again with this tick, missing his fingertip, but with a bag of what looks like food that he is about to prepare and cook up for the both of them. Now this issue does do a lot of jumping around from Cyan and Noon back to Ias and this mysterious figure, at least towards the beginning of the issue. So while we're with Ias now, I will skip ahead and just continue with Ias, and I'll go over to Cyan and Noon. Just that way I'm not jumping back and forth and it's easier for follow along with me. Ias nervously asked who this mysterious person is. More specifically, what are you? And the man responds with, "I'm a friend, if you will allow it." His name is Graft, and he asks Ias his name. Keep in mind, he still has this tick while he's talking. Ias introduces himself, and they both share a meal with each other, where Ias asks, what exactly is this that I'm eating? Graft responds, "Tubbers and varmints." Ias says, "Gotta be honest with you, Graft, it's delicious." So Graft has made Ias this delicious meal, saved him from the sand dunes, gave him a fire to sit by, food for his belly, and they continue talking. It's so lonely out here. I'm so glad I found you, Ias. And Ias asks Graft why he's all alone. Graft explains that he lost people in his village and found it hard to continue living there, so he left and started wandering. And Ias says, it's familiar. My parents died when I was young. I never met them. And Graft says this famous line. Nobody really dies. Not as long as we keep them with us. And Graft asks Ias if he'll join him on his way to his village, to go back to his village. He's had a very hard time returning to his village by himself, so he thinks maybe with his new friend Ias, he can return back with confidence. And Ias says, yeah, you know what, sure, I'll do it. It'll give me a chance to look for my friends. Now we're going to go back to Cyan and Noon, walking the plains of Mysma, trying to find any signs of Ias. Noon is a very skilled tracker. Cyan's complaining how she's only seen the same things since they began their search. Sand, more sand, and vultures, and corpses. Not a lot of good stuff. No clear signs leading towards Ias. And Noon begins to reveal some of his tricks about the direction of the sand dunes, showing which way the storm went. And if they follow that direction, there's a good chance that they'll find Ias as well. Then the two of them are met with a gang, the Mysma gang. I don't even know what their gang name is called, but they're clearly looking for a fight or some trouble or just money for being on their turf from what the boss calls Mysma tax. These people don't look inviting. The leader has a giant hammer with spikes on it. There's one henchman, bulging muscles, not as big as the Fister, but about there. Another one with a chain and a mohawk wearing a Deathstroke-esque mask. There's one wearing a gas mask, and another one wearing a cowboy hat and a skull on his face. Noon and Cyan end up getting into a fight with these people, because they're not going to pay them, and they're sure as hell not going to stop their journey now while they're still looking for Ias. Cyan is very nimble on her feet. She's able to jump, hop, run away, slide through people's legs, just get out of the way of the attacks. And she uses this very cool electric staff that she kind of just conjured from her wrist. She was studying her father's database. She actually knows where a lot of the vital pressure points are. It takes down the biggest hulking guy of the group in one simple tap to a pressure point on his stomach. And that's when all hell breaks loose. Noon gets into a fight. The leader and the one with the mohawk and chain begin to fight Cyan. After some slick moves from Cyan, getting the chain wrapped around her staff as the leader took her massive hammer to go bring it down onto Cyan's head, she jumped and pulled back her staff and the man holding the chain in the way of the hammer to where her boss killed her own henchman. Very smart. Very smart. Now she's in a one-on-one with the leader, and the leader is fucking pissed. Cyan smacks her around a bit, gets a good blows in there, knocks her down for what looks like the count. She makes a witty remark to Noon. What's taking you so long? Noon says, hey, you youngins are always in a hurry. But then it turns out that the boss isn't actually down for the count. She gets right back up with her hammer and is ready to fight. Now, after a tough tussle between the two ladies, Cyan barely pulls through and hits another pressure point, blowing this lady to bits, and gets free of the chokehold that she had her in. Cyan clearly knows her stuff when it comes to one-on-one combat, and maybe two-on-one. I feel like, from what I've seen so far, it would be very easy for her to get overwhelmed if she has more than two enemies fighting against her. After Noon finishes up the two gooners that he was fighting, the big guy that Cyan initially hit with the pressure point starts to crawl away, throwing up blood. Obviously not in a good shape at all. Cyan remarks, I think he learned his lesson, and Noon says he might have, but we can't risk him going back to fetch his buddies. Shoots him in cold blood from behind, blowing a goddamn hole in his chest. Oh my goodness. And Cyan's not happy about this. She freaks out. You shot him from behind in cold blood. Now we start to see Noon's character in true light. In the Maisma, there's no place for compassion or mercy or any noble features. There's just no place for him here. And the sooner that she learns that, the easier it'll be to get through the Maisma. Maisma seems like a goddamn wasteland. And you have to act as shitty as the people that live in it to get by and survive. This guy could have easily crawled back to his buddies, and they could have, tracked down Noon and Cyan, and they could have had a lot worse on their hands. Noon is a very logical individual to where he knew what needed to be done and did it. Eventually, Noon and Cyan end up finding the rock that Ias had landed underneath and got buried in sand in, where Noon found the fingertip of Graft that fell off. And Cyan realizes that the footprints leading away from this area are of 2 different sizes, and that even the legs are of 2 different sizes. The pattern is just off, but it's one pair of footprints. And now we kind of get to see some of the technology within Cyan's wrist. She has, along with the light staff that she conjured for left wrist, it seems like she's also able to conjure some holographic stuff as well. She creates the footprints in holograph form above the ground to kind of make it easier to examine them and follow them. They get on their way, and Noon kind of seems a bit distressed about this. Cyan asks Noon, please tell me what's going on. What do you know? What exactly are these footprints from? And Noon says that she doesn't want to know the answer. Hell, I wish I didn't. His words. And we'll close off issue 4 with Sias and Graft making their way towards Graft's village. And when they finally get there, they see a sign that says, "Danger, stay away." And Ias says, it doesn't seem very welcoming here. And Graft says, "Oh, that was just to keep out raiders. Play off their superstitions. It's nothing compared to the truth, to what befell us." He still has this tick. This whole time, he still has been talking with this tick. And as they get past the danger sign, "Stay away," we then see a mound of skulls just littering this pit. And Ias asks, "Graft, what happened here?" Graft begins to explain that it was a beautiful place, but it couldn't last. Nothing ever lasts. My wife, she got sick. No one would help us. They were going to let her leave me all alone. But I found a solution, a way to save her, to keep her with me. And here, his tick disappears. He almost seems to be beginning to speak differently. "I knew how to save her, our children, the entire village, how to keep us together, always. But they didn't believe me. They wouldn't trust me. They wouldn't understand. No one has to die, not really. But they wouldn't let me save them. They wouldn't let me." And it kind of seems like Graft is breaking down and crying. And Ias tries to, comfort him. So they're kind of no friends, and this was his village, and there are nothing but smoldering ash and skulls littered about. On the last page, Ias is looking over the edge, and Graft has completely changed. No longer crying, has a very, very sinister smile on his face. And with Noon's words up in the corner, Eyes is in horrible danger. And that is issue 4. I kind of wanted to make this video as a review when I first thought of it, but then it turned into just a description of it. And I think that kind of works with what I wanted. I just kind of wanted to share the story briefly and give my thoughts on it. And to close out this video, I am extremely excited for issue number 5. I can't wait to see what they make with it, and I hope that it just continues on and on. And a fun fact about issue 4, Mr. Charlie White himself actually took part in the writing for that issue. The other 3 were written by some of the other creators or another writer, but it was cool to see that Mr. Moist Critical himself took a part in issue 4's writing. Just a little tidbit I thought I'd throw out there. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments. I spent a pretty decent amount of time on it. I just would like to know what you think, and if you are interested in these kind of videos in the future, let me know too. I can find other forms of media to do this on. I have the first 2 compendiums of Invincible, which I would be more than happy to go over as well and share my thoughts. Yeah, thanks for checking it out. See you next time.